We are live, and as you can see by the title, this is Raise Your Level Workshop. We've completed our notes. We got about 12 pages of notes, so we're going to get through those today. For anybody who's jumping on, we are doing Maximum Entertainment 2.0 workshops to make sure that we ourselves are raising our level consistently and that you potentially have the chance to come along for the journey as well. Right now, I'm just getting set up with some of the back end stuff. We are going to put a goal for this, as always. All colors. 5 super chats is the goal. And we'll put it up for 3 hours. This is called our book sponsorship gift away. Yes, if you want to get a copy sent out to somebody. Sorry, spelling and talking at the same time apparently is beyond me at the moment. Set that goal. Boom. There it is. Mute. Okay. Back over here, make sure that the live is working well. Here's what I like to do. Just for you guys who might be doing more digital space stuff as well as performing live, this is back end. You know, we're doing a workshop, so I want to make sure that you're getting as much information as possible and it's good information for you. Now, I could be watching my live on YouTube, but what I prefer to do is I prefer to there it is. Okay. So what I prefer to do is I prefer to pop out my chat and I prefer to put it next to my OBS so that I can monitor my live. And if I need to, I can jump to the live, but I still have I can see if the live is still operating the way it's supposed to in studio mode, which is what Ken Weber recommends, that you can see and hear what your audience can see and hear. So I have some music in the background, so if any time that is too loud, please let me know and we can modify that with our Stream Deck from Elgato. No plug there, just it's what we have. It's a nice little thing, and we can change scenes with it like this, but I don't know if we even have anything set up for that. So we do have stuff set up, but for some reason I have to troubleshoot that, which is a whole other video. We actually did our last live was a tech test, and we discovered that I had been so long since I used the Stream Deck that I had to reset it because things weren't operating the same way. So, very nice. Now, the one thing that I can't quite see from this screen is how many people are watching. Right now, it's just myself, which is okay, but I can see the chat, so I can still follow along if somebody jumps on. And the reason why I do that now is because we learn from our mistakes, which is one of the last things in the book that Ken talks about, which is learning from your failures, right? And so I had a person jump on one of my streams and say hello, but because I wasn't monitoring my chat, I missed it, and so they had already left by the time that I had said anything to them. So these are the notes that I have for Maximum Entertainment 2.0. We're going to go through them. They're substantially shorter than the book itself. And as we go through these workshops on a weekly basis, we're going to look at different things. We're going to review different things. And for right now, we are going to specifically target my own stuff. And we're going to have a certain list and criteria that we're going to look at. If you submit things, we will do so only with your permission. Now, Ken recommends only offering advice and things like that privately, but we will do it in a public forum with your permission if you submit things. Now, if there are more famous people out there that we want to do case studies of, we will look at their things, but we will be very careful with the way that we look at them. For instance, I was looking at some short reels from Michael O'Brien, and he specifically asked, "Oh, what have you noticed from my videos?" So I gave him a small little breakdown in the comments. He thanked me, very polite, And that's kind of how I want the interactions to go, is that I said, hey, I was reading Maximum Entertainment 2.0. I'm just kind of looking at different people for, just seeing how their videos play out with their performances and things like that. And he then responded with, hey, what do you see? So that is green light. So that's what we want to do here. We want to make sure that we're getting permission and that they want the feedback. And I understand that my feedback is my opinion and that I am a beginner at doing this. And so I really want to get really good at directing my own stuff, and by seeing what works for other people, not from taking what they're doing specifically, but seeing what the little puzzle pieces that made it work in the first place, and then building off from that, because that's what we do. So one thing to keep in mind is that if I were to go through the book again and write different notes, I would probably absolutely write different things, because every time you look at it, you might see something a little bit different. And I'm sure that if you went through the book, you might write down different things as well. There were certain sections that I completely ignored for the fact that when I read it, I made a mental note that it's not something that will probably ever come up for me. So let's go ahead and take a look. Out of these 12 pages of breakdown, what did I find important on my reread of Maximum Entertainment 2.0 that stuck out to me? Maximum Entertainment 2.0. Now, I don't necessarily want to read through all of these. I kind of just want to give, these are notes, so they're very chaotic, right? Defining entertainment, I think, is important. Anything that purposefully transports your mind into another world. So, given that, I want to make sure that whatever I produce, in some small part, does that. Example. When I watch a video, even if I know how something is done, I still am honest about the fact that I am tricked by it. Now, I use the word trick here because we want to talk about later on. We have trick, puzzle, magical moment. And what I love about a trick that fools me is that I don't need to puzzle it out because I already know how it's done. So when I rewatch it, I'm like, well, there it is. But I love that moment when I'm pulled away from my, scrutinizing brain, and I get to enjoy the magic. That's what I love, when it works. So for me and how my brain works, it's not so much that I'm looking to be fooled, which is always fun, but I enjoy when it works. And so that's kind of some of the criteria that I use, is that I was transported to a different world because for a split second, what they were trying to convey to me is what my brain believed. And then I came back to reality. So that's the definition of entertainment, and that's what we're looking for when we do our performances. Director. Get one or learn how to critique yourself honestly. Very important. And then, of course, in order to be a good director, you want to put yourself in the audience's shoes before, during, and after your show. You want to make sure that everything is for them. I mean, that's why you're there. So you want to maintain their attention as much as possible. Record your show and then break it down 100%. The good news is we do a lot of videos here on the channel, and so we actually get to see my recordings. And so we're going to be 100% honest with those. We're going to try to be nice to ourselves because I do have some older stuff that is not great. And so we're going to learn from them and hopefully potentially be able to remake them even better. Find a mentor. So nowadays it's so easy online. There's mentors all over the place, whether they are a de facto mentor, somebody that inspires you, or to specifically have a mentor that can say directly to you, hey, this is what you need to work on, is also good. And again, they are all over YouTube. You could potentially find for $5 to $10, you can join a membership, a Discord. There is so much opportunity out there. Find the one that works best for you. And if you do have a good one, go ahead and drop it down below, and that way we can start sharing that information. Raise your level. Roll credits. Nice little CinemaSins reference right there, because that's the name of the workshop. Raise your level. That's the whole point of everything that we're doing, is we want to level up. Practice, perform, promote, repeat. That is my personal recipe for success, but that's also just something that you want to do consistently. It's your PR campaign. PR campaign. You know what I'm saying? Some over FUD, I guess. Anyway, be an entertainer. Entertain. Everything is the bottom line. What is entertainment? How do you entertain your audience? Be an entertainer. And you're going to see that repeated through this as we go through it, because I wrote that down multiple times. Be an entertainer. Okay. Hierarchy of mystery. So you want to make sure you have a puzzle, trick, extraordinary moment. Those things are in mind. They are elevations of each other. If I were to do a trick, something along those lines, probably not great social proof there. You have a... Did I write that backwards? Puzzle, trick, extraordinary moment. We have the book here so that we can, in fact, go right to it to see, make sure that we have our information correct, because that's really what this is all about. Okay. Bonafide magic. Not sure why I can't. Oh, there it is. Yeah, puzzle, trick, extraordinary moment. So basically, the idea for that is simple: that if you do something to challenge your audience, you may find that you're falling short. Because if you trigger the challenge part of somebody's brain, the competitive side of it, they might just stop seeing the performance and only be focusing on what it is that you're doing specifically. And that is why we're still going through. We've actually listened to it probably the first time through. We're on our second listen through on Audible of Sleights in Mind. It's a book about neurochemistry and neuroscience that focuses specifically on magic and how it affects our brain. And so one of the things it talks about is there's a very small section of how individuals that are on the spectrum, magic is very difficult for them to enjoy. And part of that is because their brains don't have the same social cues as everybody else. So for them, when you want everybody to look to the left, they look to the right. So we're just different that way. We're hardwired differently. So in order to perform magic for people on the spectrum, you have to be really good, because misdirection doesn't always work on them. The same thing also applies to people who are sick, because if you're like having stomach cramps, you might look down when you get a cramp, and you want people to look left, and now they're looking down. And so one of the examples from the book is this: master performer. He's on stage for a workshop for these scientists and magicians and things like that, and he does this trick, and everybody is like blown away by it. And afterwards, this one of the authors was like, I don't understand why you thought it was so good. I mean, it was clear that he did this and this. And they're like, we didn't see that. And that's because she was actually having she was pregnant at the time and was having morning sickness. And so instead of like following his misdirection, her brain wasn't following the social cues because of the morning sickness, and so she was not paying attention as much because of that, because her brain was focusing on something else and not focusing on his misdirection. So do not seek to challenge your audience unless you're Jason Ladany, and that's like his whole thing, and he really pushes it to the point where he wants you to try to catch him because his skill level is so high. Now, do we understand and appreciate the character that he's putting forward? Sure. I enjoy it as for what it is. He's masterful at what he does. Is it really the thing that I go for? No, I'm more of a silly performer. Even when I do my lives and stuff, it looks like I'm messing up every single trick, but it always comes together at the end, because that's how I'm not a man of mystery. I'm just some guy who, ran into on the side of the road, type You know, I'm the cuckoo uncle. You know, like that's really I'm the uncle that comes to the parties and shows you, you know, magic. You know, it's a mystery. It's fun and it's exciting, and there are mistakes along the way, and those mistakes are brought into the performance. But we want to tighten that up a little bit. So if you take a puzzle and you elevate it to a trick, then it it becomes something like people who like to solve puzzles are just like people who solve Rubik's cubes. They might be looking for the mechanics. They might be looking for the little parts of that. Sometimes what that means is that those people might actually be interested in taking up magic themselves, especially like younger style, you know, younger age people. But even nowadays, you have access to things later on in life, so you might even take that into perspective as you move through all of these things, that maybe you want to look for those little gems, those little people who are a little bit too interested in what you're doing, and see it cultivate maybe a relationship there for them to start magic themselves. Possible. Now, the next part of this is when we call it a trick. So it's not so much about the components of it, it's when you are not suspending their belief system enough for them to be taken out of their body for this magical journey. It is This is a trick. I have my cards, I have my coins, I have this, that, and that. Oh, you have things that do magic. Oh, okay, you have things that do tricks. It's just you're just trying to fool my brain. You know, you're not entertaining me in the sense of like, I don't care what it is that you're doing. I'm having a good time. You know, like that's really where the trick comes in, where they know it's a trick and they're just kind of watching the trick unfold. Still better than the puzzles part of it, because now you've moved it from, oh, I want to figure out what this puzzle is, to I know that you're just doing tricks. Then you take it to the next level where you might blow their minds completely, but it's not just about that. It's about the fact that 15 to 20 minutes goes by and you're like, oh man, like I don't even know this is so much fun. Like you know what I mean? You're in that rolling, you're kind of stuck in that. And I just did something that we talk about later. Do you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Those are things we want to avoid, because specifically for some reasons, for some individuals, especially if they're not following. Like for instance, I'm doing a live right now, and you might jump into the live halfway through, and I say, "Do you know what I mean?" And you're like, "No, I don't know what you mean because I wasn't just here a second ago." Same thing happens when you're doing a live performance and people are jumping in and leaving and coming back and leaving, especially on TikTok, which I've started doing. We might actually get a live in today. Hopefully, we'll jump over on TikTok after this workshop and do a small little magic show for about 25 minutes to half an hour. Hopefully. So, basically, what happens is that, oh, I have somebody pick a card, and then I go to do a card trick, and then later on I have another card introduced into the trick as kind of like a deterrent method. For instance, I would say, here's the card that we're going to look for, and I show them their card, and I might not know what it is, and then I say, okay, I want you to try to fool me, right? Go ahead and pick any card in the deck, even if it's your card. Don't tell me if it's your card. Just pick a random card. Say it out loud. Okay, so now we have a physical card that's been selected, and then we have a random card that is selected, that I know the random card, but I don't know the selected card. And then we go through the trick, and then at the end, I produce their card that was never mentioned. So it's nice, but if somebody shows up while the random card is being selected at the end of the trick, they might be like, oh, well, that's not the card that we picked. And I'm like, right. But that's why I work in these little things where I say, okay, we had a card selected, and then we had a random card, like a truth or lie scenario, and then through the lie, I find the right card. You know, find the truth. So you have to be very careful with the stages of your show, because the same thing can happen when you're doing a live performance where people might check out. Maybe somebody coughed or sneezed and they're looking that way, or somebody went to the bathroom, they come back. Or maybe you have like a really flat part of your show where they kind of just like, you know, what's going on, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're like, oh, the magic is still happening. Let me take a look at what's going on. And you're like, I don't know what's going on. So you really can't assume that your audience knows and is following along every step of the way. It's your job to keep them engaged. And then that leads to the extraordinary moment, which is if you follow the contours of that trick, the truth and the lie is that here's the card that you selected. I did not see that card. I did not touch that card. And then you lied to me about what your card was. And then at the end, I reveal your card. Ooh, it's a beautiful moment. It's nice. Reactions, very important. This is exactly what, leaning into the fact that, like, as you build your performance and what you're trying to push, you're trying to build to that climax, and you're trying to create magical moments, again, that's entertaining, that remove people from their body, and they are just having this wonderful out-of-body experience. You want them to have rapt attention. All they're doing is they're just fixating on every move that you make, but not your magical moves, not your misdirection moves. They're watching the story unfold, and they're right there with it. So that's very important. You want them to be engaged with the story, but not the movements, unless that's the story. You get what I'm saying? Number 2 is laughter. You want them to laugh, right? Because that's one of the things that, if you're telling jokes, or if you're doing comedy bits, or if it's funny, like a lot of my performances is like, oh no, I messed up again. Oh no, I messed up again. But it does end up, working out in the end. Now, is that where I want to stay? Maybe I want to move away from that and do more of a, more serious stuff, which is fine. But we get the laughter. We mess up. It's fine. We have a good time, because at the end of the day, if you're laughing and I'm laughing, it's good. As long as the magic is still solid, but we'll get to see that later. Astonishment. That goes back to that whole thing of extraordinary moment. You've removed them from their body, and they cannot believe what it is that they're seeing. That is a powerful reaction. Avoid filler. Avoid it. We've got these manga series, the anime rather. There might be filler in the manga, but that's the comic version, the graphic novel. The anime, you might be watching it through, and you got 100 episodes in your season, and then all of a sudden you got 375 episodes, and you're like, where did the other 200 episodes come from? There's only 100 arc. This is the arc of the season. 100 episodes get you from beginning to the end of the story. All of this other stuff doesn't build on that. It doesn't do anything for the actual story. So you want to avoid filler. You want to avoid filler arcs. You want to avoid filler stories. You want to avoid filler words, and things like that. Unless you have a pause that's important, unless that's your character. See what I did there? So instead of stuttering into it, you simply pause for dramatic effect. Think about what it is that you're going to say, and then say it, instead of bringing in the ums and the ahs and the slow pacings, because you want them to hang on every word. And so if you say ums and ahs, it kind of just screams of lack of confidence, right? And so I would recommend watching Ving. I think his name is Ving. He is a coach. Let's see here. Voice. Is it a speech coach? Speech coach. VIH. VINH, I think is his name. Ving Yang. You would know him if you saw him, probably. He's all over YouTube. He's all over the social platforms. Just find yourself a nice coach that you can just watch the videos. If you want to pay for their subscriptions, we just talked about, you gotta have a guy for everything. Guy, girl, whatever. Mentor in everything. You gotta have a triage mechanic. You gotta have a regular mechanic. You gotta have a tech guy. You gotta have a photographer. You gotta have people. You gotta network. You have to build out. Your phone contact list should have at least 100 professionals that you can call up if you have a question. And that way you can get solicited advice. You can pay them a premium if you need to, but you should be making friends with them, because there are free consultations available everywhere, especially on YouTube. Get good information, and then if you need to, you can pay them to get behind closed door information. But there's so much information out there. Make sure you sort through it and get good information. And so that will help you better yourself and help you raise your level. That's what you gotta do. You want to raise your level. Focus on the spectators' reactions and elevate your performance. So the example in the book is David Blaine. He really brought close-up street magic to life. I mean, it was already there, but you weren't seeing it in the digital age as much. Now his specials are coming out back, 20, 30 years ago now, like long, decades. And so what ends up happening is you are basically there and you're on the street and he shows you a trick with the coin. And instead of watching the trick, you're watching the spectators react to the trick, because yes, we enjoy the trick, but we also want to see other people having a good time. And so that was something new. So watch your spectators' reactions to what it is that you're doing so that you can then incorporate that and get better, because something that you might think is funny or something that you think is working might not be working. So really pay attention to what it is that your spectator is doing so that you can do better. Pay attention to how they're reacting so that you can do that more. Okay, this is probably a great piece of information that's coming up next. Let's jump over here real quick because we want to see what is happening on the actual live here. Nothing to see here because we have a pop-out chat. It's still just me. I'm going to go ahead and like the stream. And hopefully this workshop is something, like I said, we're going to be doing this on a weekly basis. And we're going to really get through it. So we're going through my notes right now of Maximum Entertainment 2.0. And we're getting this format style out. We're going to extrapolate the information from my notes and turn it into a digital rating system that I'll be able to put on the screen so that you guys will be able to see as we go through the review the stuff that we're talking about here. And now all the other stuff that we talked about is that beautiful foundation work. But this is where the pillars come in. The pillars, the 6 pillars of entertainment success, right? So we got a foundation and now we put the pillars in, because in order to get our walls up, we got to have our pillars. And in order for our presentation and our performances to rise to the next level, we have to have these 6 pillars. First and foremost, master your craft. So when we do our review criteria, the first thing I'm going to look for is, am I performing this trick to the best of my ability? And one of the best ways to do that is to learn the trick 100% with nothing. What I mean by that is learn the mechanics of the trick with 0 pattern. Learn the mechanics of the trick with no movements beyond the trick itself. And then make sure that that trick is hiding the behind the skill of what you're doing. Make sure that nothing is flashing and that you can perform it every single time. You can perform it perfectly, right? Without even thinking about it. That's what we're going to be looking for. Number 2, am I communicating my humanity, right? Am I showing emotion? Am I emoting properly? Am I leading people down this narrative with my body, with my voice, with my dialogue? Are people tuning in? Do I care about what is happening to the guy on the screen? And that's really what we want to make sure, that we are creating movement with our face, with our body. We want to convey a story to you to make you care about who I am. Now, something that I forgot to do at the beginning that I really want to make sure that I am doing, especially as we move forward for new people who might be watching my channel, whether it be here or whether it be over on TikTok, is I have to put together some accolades, right? I don't have a whole lot. I don't have a lot of live performing accolades. Yes, I've been doing YouTube. Yes, I've been doing magic for almost a decade. And I've been studying and researching some of the greats of our time, as well as some of the older greats that they learned from, and some of the up and coming new people. I have so much information that I could share, but I want to make sure that I'm providing to you the best introduction possible And obviously at the beginning of our live, that was a very silent start, right? Because we clicked go live and then there was nothing for about 10 seconds, which there was no hook to this video. I basically relied on my thumbnail and I relied on my title for you to understand what it is that we're doing. And that might not really convey enough information for you to care about what I'm doing, especially if I'm doing nothing at the beginning of the video. So we have to work on our introductions. We have to work on being able to jump into our videos to set that hook in and do our powerful opener. Now, opener doesn't have to be magic, but because I'm a magician and because I am talking about performing better, I should be showing you social proof that I can perform magic at a sufficient level throughout the presentation. That would, to me, would signify that I can do it, because as this is a presentation on performance, I should be performing throughout the presentation. So that is something that we will notate. But by communicating my humanity, I can become friends with you throughout the course of this presentation, so that the next time you see my podcast, my live stream, it's kind of a podcast, the next time you see it go live, you can then be like, hey, there's JC Magic. Let's go ahead and check him out. Something like that, right? Number 3, can capture the excitement. So sometimes we might misspeak, but we want to make sure that we get back on track with our script. Sometimes it can happen. So we're going to capture the excitement. So again, as we build each routine up, we want to make sure that we're going back to our reactions, which is rapt attention, laughter, or astonishment. So we want to make sure that we are getting these things for every routine, and we want to make sure that our routines are building 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? We want to escalate up the mountain, and then we want to slowly bring them down at the end, right? We want to build overall to a climax, but we don't want to ever overshoot ourselves, right? Because if our opener is the best trick and everything's downhill after that, we're going to lose them, right? We want to make sure that our opener is strong, and we want to follow it up every single time with something that is a little bit better and incrementally climbing to the end, right? Now, you can have some routines that are about base level, maybe a little bit of drop off because you want a roller coaster with texture and things like that, which is okay, but you want to make sure that you're maintaining control of every moment, right? That's number 4. So we had capture the excitement, but we want to control every moment. So if you want them to go on this roller coaster ride of emotion, then you have to be in control of that. You don't want it to be a thing where you're like doing your performance and you want this, but then every other routine you notice a little bit of drop off every time. You don't want that if that's not what you're going for. But if you want them to feel excitement and you want them crying of happiness, joy, tears of joy, but then in the next one it's like, I want you to kind of be sad because I just gave you a good feeling. Now I want you to be sad. Now I want you to come back with some rage, right? Just kind of think about that, where maybe it's wrong to want these emotions because maybe that doesn't fit your show. But if you are creating that emotion through your words, then, and your dialogue and your routines, then at least you're controlling the moments. But then that goes back to the other things that we want to make sure that everything is entertaining for our spectators. Because I don't know about you, but like if I'm at the end of a show, I mean, really, in reality, it kind of does. Like if you're watching a movie, you might have some happy moments, you have some sad moments, you might be angered by, the bad guys are getting ahead of the good guys, So there's definitely some turmoil and tumultuous emotions, right? But we want to make sure that I really don't think at the end of a live performance, we don't want to traumatize our audience. I'm not sure if that's what we want to go for. We just want them to feel good and to feel happy about the experience. Now, obviously, if you're doing a horror show, if you're doing Halloween magic, there might be some scaring happening. But that's exhilaration. There's some excitement in that because there really isn't any death or dismemberment happening in these shows, but we convey this. So just control every moment. capture the excitement, communicate your humanity, master your craft. And then you want to do number 5, which is eliminate weak spots. So as you're going through and performing, you want to make sure that, again, let's say you do have some drop off in routine 3. Let's get rid of it. Out the door. It's gone. Okay? You want to rework that routine. Maybe you want to keep the trick. Maybe the effect itself is good. Maybe your pattern's wrong. Maybe it's not pulling people in. Maybe it's not building. Or maybe your pattern's great, but the trick itself doesn't fit the motion and the movement of what you're doing. So you want to make sure that you're eliminating these weak spots and every single thing is doing what you want it to do. Now, let's say your opener is weak. You want to get rid of you want to start with a very strong opener, and you want to stay strong the entire time. So that's why we want to eliminate these weak spots so that we're not getting drop off, because you want to control the motion. So if your emotion, again, and I'll reiterate this every time, if your emotion is intentionally dropping off to create these sharp, jagged edges to get people on the edge of their seats, that's a risk-taking style of performance where at the end of it you feel exhausted. That's exhilarating. That can work. That's not the performance that I can do or want to do, but you're controlling those moments. You're giving them time to breathe, and then you're taking their breath away again. But we want to make sure that these parts of our show where there's drop off is intentional, where there's some silence. Get a drink of water, take a deep breath, because we're about to jump into something else. You want it to be intentional to level them back off. You don't want them to be distracted because what you're doing is not working for them. So eliminate those weak spots. And then number 6, again, build to climax. As you start off, we're going to do 6 levels here, and we'll just talk about what these 6 things are again. Master your craft is number 1, but that is so very important. You want that. Master your craft is your foundational piece. Communicate your humanity. That's where you're going to start building out your walls, right? That's your pillars. That's where your strengths come in, right? Because if they don't care about you as a performer, they're not going to care about what you're doing, because we want to support our friends. We don't want to support strangers, right? And that's just a natural thing in our brain. And then after we got our walls, we want to put our roof on, which is to capture the excitement. We're going to capture it inside of our little building that we're building. Control every moment. There's where the communicate your humanity is the pillar of your whole performance. Without your pillars, you're lost. Everything falls apart. Without your roof, you can't capture it inside the bubble. And without your walls, your 4 walls, which is number 4, 4 walls, to control every moment. Because you can't control it unless it's walled in, right? Number 5 is to eliminate your weak spots. That's where you're going to get your rafters, right? You want to put your rafters in so that it doesn't crumble in on itself. And number 6, you're going to want to paint your house. You want to paint your house. You want to put a nice fancy door on it. Get a nice knocker on there, right? So that when they walk up to your door, they're like, oh, wow, this is shiny. I like this. The windows are great. Everything is working. Everything's copacetic. You got a nice yard out front. You don't want to have a yellow lawn. You don't want to have a dirt lawn. You want to have a nice, fresh green lawn that's mowed. Nice smell of grass. Nice sidewalk coming down. Nice sidewalk along the way. And then you got a nice fence maybe. Maybe a little dog. Maybe a little swing set over here. You're going to build everything out so that when people walk up to your performance, they can see that what you're building is something that they want to be a part of, right? Because it's familiar to them. So, it's great. Now, how do we do all of that? Well, we do all that by being Superman, not Clark Kent, right? Nothing wrong with Clark Kent, but Clark Kent makes mistakes. Superman doesn't. Now, like I said, in my performances, I make mistakes intentionally because, like good old-fashioned Leonard Green, his performances is about control of the chaos, right? There's chaos happening all through his routine, but he's successful in everything that he's doing. Mark McCoby is somebody that we just recently started following. He's the FISM champion. He's been on Penn and Teller. His whole thing is about, I gotta real quick, I gotta do this for you, and everything's just sloppy and fall over the place, and yet he's just pulling the cards out left and right. So Superman, right? You're in control. It's your show. You're the entertainer. Everything is under your control. Now, control can be good or bad. But what we're talking about is we're talking about confidence, because you are the master of the stage. You are the performer. This is your domain. So you want to make sure that you're coming forward strong, confident, in control of yourself, in control of your performance. We're going to talk more on that later. Tell them a story. Oh, we skipped smile. Stars, exclamation points with a smile, smiley face. Smile for your audience, right? get them excited. Do a little bit of a laugh. We're gonna have a great time today. Woot woot. Have a good time with it. Because if you're laughing and if you're smiling, then they're going to laugh and they're going to smile. Tell them a story. Now, this has to be a good story. Now, you don't want to start off with a story as your opener because it's too long. Your opener should be social proof that you can do what it is that you say that you can do, and it should be anywhere between instantaneous, like poof of smoke and you're there, right? You appear. Something along those lines, or like you come out and you're just like, flip off your cape and you've changed your clothes. Something happens that is flashy, and it shouldn't take more than 2 minutes because you don't have enough time to build that up. You only got 9 seconds for your introduction, like not your introduction of like, hi, I'm this person. They already know who you are. If you're performing, somebody else should have introduced you. We're going to talk more about that later as well. But when you come out, your social proof should be happening within 30 seconds. It can take up to 2 minutes, but the faster it happens, the better, to get them to start their journey and to get them removed from their body so they can start experiencing these magical moments as soon as possible. So you want to tell them a story, and this is going to start to build rapport with your audience. You want to humanize yourself so that you can start to connect with them. This is basically Superman, pretending to be Clark Kent. That's the beauty of Superman, right? He is Superman. His alias is Clark Kent. Acknowledge your surroundings. You want to make sure that where you're at. You want to make sure that you're in the moment, right? And this is why a lot of comics and performers will say, it's great to be here in Buffalo. That's the closest city to me, or New York City, or the Opera House, or wherever you happen to be performing, wherever the city is, whatever the state is, whatever the people are. Acknowledge the overall location of where you're at so that people feel like you're happy to be there to see them. They paid to see you, but you're like, look, I love coming here to perform for you guys because you guys are always great. Now, some comics will mess around, they'll have fun, they'll have a good time for jokes, and that's their thing, and that works for them. Acknowledge your audience. So not only did you acknowledge that you're here in their city to see them, but now you are seeing them specifically. Hey, good to see you, sir. Good to see you, sir. Let's say you pre-gamed a little bit and you talked to them before the show. Hey, we had a good chat. Hey, how's it going? How you doing? Good stuff. Maybe you've been there before. Hey, I've seen you a couple of times. Really get to just, you're not chatting with them, but you're pointing out that you are familiarizing yourself with them and including them, so that there's not a barrier between you and the audience. Because if they feel like you've put up your defenses, then they're going to put up theirs, and you're not going to have a good interaction. React and respond. So if you are communicating with your audience and they are saying something to you, first and foremost, you should have a good solid microphone that allows you to communicate that. A lot of the times you'll see in talk shows and things that there's somebody walking around with a microphone, and they hand it to them. They have them stand up. They say, hey, how's it going? What's your name? Blah, blah, blah. They're talking. You're responding to what they're saying. So it's like, oh, yeah, I flew 3,000 miles to see you. Well, thank you. I appreciate that so much. Thank you for, that's a feat, right? That's a good portion. Like, they traveled across country to see you. So respond to that. Don't fall into this pattern routine where it's like, hello, how old are you? How old are you? Where do you live? You're just asking them a questionnaire, and then you're not like following up with what it is that they're saying. Reveal your humanity with emotions. You want to react, and you want to, if something is sad, you want to be sad. If something is funny, it's funny. If something is upsetting, it's upsetting. You want them to see the fact that you feel emotions too, because if you're feeling emotions, they'll feel emotions. Especially if the material that you're talking about is emotional, you want to convey to them that you care about what it is that you're talking about. Be animated. Maintain eye contact. Don't be creepy about it, but you want to make sure that as you're performing, even if you can't see the audience because of the way the lighting is set up, you want to pretend like you can see them. You want to look directly at people when you talk to them. Don't stare at the same guy over and over again, the same girl over here. You want to make sure that you're changing up who you're seeing. And make sure you don't forget the people in the back. Hey, yeah, you guys in the back, thank you guys for showing up. I really appreciate it. You know, people up front, you guys are good too. You know, you want to make sure that you're responding and you're giving credence to everybody. You want to make sure that the whole audience is involved and you're looking at everybody. Never apologize to your audience in terms of something going wrong, because one, they don't know if something went wrong unless you say something went wrong, unless it's blatantly obvious that something went wrong. But also, you want to be Superman. Unless you have to apologize, there are two exceptions. Because you have to. Something happened and you're like, sorry folks, we're going to have to pause the show real quick while we deal with this emergency, something like that. Or like for those individuals like myself who have this like very chaotic, funny, like make mistakes routine where you're like, sorry. Oh, where'd that prop go? Sorry. Or like you're doing like a balloon gag where like you blow up the balloon and then it and flies away. You're like, oh, sorry about that. You know, if you're creating a joke and you want it to, you're seeming apologetic because something funny happened and you're like, I didn't mean for that to happen. You know, things like that. You definitely want to make sure that you're apologizing if you have to apologize, because it's apologizing is the standard in that situation because there's an emergency and you need to pause the whatever it is that's going on. Or if it's part of the gag, that apologizing is in character for that situation. Vary the texture. Yeah, you want to make sure that you're, again, we talked about that show where it climbs. You let them recede a little bit, then bring them back up, recede a little bit, bring them back up, recede a little bit, and then you want to build up to this finale moment. You only want one of them. You don't want every routine to feel like a climax or a finale. You don't want that. You want it to feel like the end is the end, and everything along the way built towards that. You want it to go from the mundane to the impossible. Is kind of something that sounds right to me, but that might not always work for you. Basically, that's just meaning that like when you do your opener, this is your social proof, once again, that you can do what you say you can do. And then you get them again, and then you get them again, and then you get them again, and then you get them again. You know, you keep constantly, every time you're doing a routine, because you cut out all your filler, you've eliminated all your weak spots, every routine just reminds them and hammers in the fact that you are why they came to see the show. And at the end of the show, they're literally looking around going, what just happened? My brain is all over the floor. It melted. You melted my brain. Okay, now we're going to flip the script a little bit. And we're going to take a quick break. Scripting and rehearsing is next. We're going to jump over to our stream to make sure nothing is popping out at us. Everything still seems... Oh, wait a second. Yep, we're good. We're still good. We're still live. We want to make sure that we're checking in with our audience. We want to make sure that we... Now, in your performance, you're not going to... Hold the phone, everybody. Let me check my monitors. That's not what you're going to do. You're just going to mentally check in to make sure that your audio is still working. And make sure that your... everything is still working with your lighting. Make sure the audience is still there. Maybe they disappeared. Maybe you were too good and they just vanished. You just want to make sure that you're checking in from time to time mentally. Here we're doing it behind the scenes. We're creating moments where we can really stop and see what is happening. We have 2 people watching, so thank you for joining. I really appreciate that. This is Raise Your Level. This is where we are going over my notes from Maximum Entertainment 2.0, and we're creating a workshop that might help you, definitely help myself in the future here, as we go over my performances and just try to get better at performing. So let's go ahead and jump back into scripting and rehearsing. It is so very important that you you know, because we talk about creating set lists, we talk about creating prop lists, we talk about creating dialogue, pattern. You know, you're writing everything down. You're scripting everything from the moment that you get out of, maybe not from the moment you get out of your car. Let's say you wrote your introduction speech, right? You gave it to the DJ or the MC, and then they introduced you, and we're jumping ahead a little bit, but we'll reiterate this later. The MC has said, "Here is welcome, JC Magic," or whatever your name is. You walk on stage, you got a little music playing. "Hello, everybody. I'm very excited to be here in the grand land of Olean, bringing to you this presentation, this workshop on how to raise your level. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you. And thank you way in the back. I know you traveled from the Atlantic Ocean to be here today. Maybe the moon, right? You're from the moon. How's the cheese out there? Anyway, you know, have a good time with it. Build that, right? You're writing that down. Not only are you writing down what you're saying, you're writing down where you're walking, you're writing down where your props are going to be for your first trick. Are you pulling it out of your pocket? Are you pulling it out of your trunk? Are you pulling it out of off from the table because it's already set up? All of these things are written down on the dialogue. You can use different color ink. If back to your school days, if you want to use different colored pens to write down, this is what I say and this is what I do, write all that down. And make sure that you're including in your transitions too, because you have to practice those as well. So write down your script. Write down everything that you're saying and everything that you're doing. It can be basic. Doesn't matter. Because as we get into later, for choosing material, that's on the next page here, when you get to that point, you're going to be just learning the tricks. And then you're going to build your script around it based on what works best for what it is that you're doing. Because you might find that you write your script, and then after you finish a trick or a routine, you're over here, and your script says that you need to be over here, and you realize that's not going to work because the angles for this routine don't work over there. Change your script. That's what rehearsing does for you. You write the script, you rehearse it. If it doesn't work, change it. Write a script. That's your first assignment. Doesn't matter if it's something you're going to do it, you're going to practice it, but you want to make sure that you are writing that script. 100% writing what you say and what you do. Then, after you rehearse, you're going to fix it. Yeah, you're going to rewrite. You might have to throw away the whole thing, eliminate the whole thing if it's not working. But you're going to fix it. You're going to go back and after you've scripted it out, after you've rehearsed it, you're going to rewrite and get rid of all the weak spots, anything that didn't work. You're just going to keep polishing it. You're in rough draft form. You're just going to stay in rough draft form, stay there until you're happy with it, and then you're going to rehearse again and again. You're going to keep repeating that until you have a show that you are comfortable with taking live. Then you go out and perform, practice, perform, promote, repeat. We already talked about this. After you perform it, you're going to record everything. You're going to have a small little dialogue with yourself after the show where you're going to mentally go through your show, and then you're going to record it on your phone so that you can listen to these notes in a couple of days. But you're going to watch your show, you're going to talk about your show, and then you're going to go home and you're going to get your script backed out, and you're going to, cross stuff out, and you're going to keep making it better. Something that Jerry Seinfeld has stated in an interview, he would spend 15 minutes or longer. He could spend a whole day, 15 hours, looking at his comedic script, and if he could cut one syllable, he would do it. If you can cut filler words, if you can make something shorter but still carry the same impact, it's even better. It's even better. The faster that you can get to generating real emotion in your audience, the better it's going to be. And then repeat. Do it again. So if you're performing magic for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, it doesn't matter. You can always be better. Don't ever get complacent. Something that I really, really stress, no matter how many times I go through this, and I'll probably say it a couple of times, we do not perfect our script and our rehearsals so that we can check out during our performance. We do it so that we can be in the moment with our audience and enjoy the show with them and look for power moments to connect. Do not step out on your audience. We do not learn the script so that you can be on autopilot. We learn the script and we rehearse so that we can be the best performer that we can possibly be. Boom. Be a marksman. Rapt attention, astonishment, laughter. This is what you're seeking, remember? Sound familiar? These are the reactions. Now we're going to add a fourth thing. Necessary instructions or explanations. These are the only things that your every single word of patter, every single movement that you execute should be seeking attention. Behold, my green pen. The green pen shall now disappear. Woot woot. But of course, if you're over here on the left, you can see that the pen is right behind my hand. It's not great from that angle. Laughter, right? Now you're exposing, but this is something that Jason Marr does where he's surrounded by people and he'll do the slapstick vanish and sure, oh, way to go. People are astonished because it's vanished. But then he'll point out, he's like, everybody over here just saw what I did. Perspective is everything. That's so important to me. Perspective is everything. But necessary instructions or explanations. Maybe you're doing a trick that requires a little bit more build and a little bit more tact, or you have a volunteer on stage. You want to make sure that you're giving them clear and decisive instructions so that they can execute what it is that you want them to do 100%. And that's before you hand them the prop. For instance, if you say, go ahead and write your name, or you've seen this plenty of times, I'm going to hand you this stuff and I want you to throw it into the air. You turn around and then you say, on the count of 3, as the papers are already falling. Like you can do it for a gag, and that's the only time it should be done. But if they did that intentionally, if they threw the papers in the air as soon as you hand them and you turn around because you didn't say, on the count of 3, throw these in the air. You want to make sure that you're controlling every moment. And if you just hand them something without giving them clear instructions and they make a mistake, it's your fault. Because they can't make mistakes. Only you can. Because it's your show. You're Superman. You everything should be happening because you want it to happen. Write actions and dialogue. We just covered that with your script. You want to make sure you're writing everything. Again, you can color code it. You can put it in Microsoft Word or whatever program you're using so that you can break up these pieces and components. And then what's really nice about those programs is you can actually do the notes on the side. And so that if you wanted to send it to somebody for critiquing, they wouldn't have to modify anything. They could just put in the notes. Smooth transitions. We talked about this. Transitions are so important. You got to smoothly transition from one thing to the next. Flow, flow, flow. I have heard professional magicians who have been performing for decades say, I want to be better at transitioning. I don't want it to feel like trick, 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 trick. And I want to actually add a theme to my show. Everybody can build to this. Even professional magicians who do successful shows still transition block A, block B, block C, block D. And there might be nothing in between them. It can still happen. You can do better, but still be successful at a lower level. But raise your level by making sure you have smooth transitions. Memorize your script so you can focus on your performance. That's it. Practice and rehearse. First, we must script so that we can ad-lib later. This is very important. Again, this is what I said. It's so important to memorize your script and to practice your script and to know where you're going to stand and what you're going to say and what you're going to do so that you can look for those power moments. And then don't forget to write those down. If you can remember them, make sure you remember these ad-libs that work, because that's how you make a good show. Is sometimes spontaneity is what makes it, because the unique audience experience that you have might create a moment in your show that you could never possibly create on your own. We only can do our best work as performers and entertainers when we are doing group think. Just remember that your audience can offer you something far superior to something that you might be able to create yourself. Now, there have been places and times, and I'll use this as an example, in movies, you have actors and actresses that are notorious for ad-libbing scenes. But then you have those same actors and actresses go in interviews and say not one line of dialogue was changed because they were that good. The writer was that good. Just, you know, but it's also important on the other token that if you know your actors and actresses well enough and you know that they're strong at their craft, you let them kind of have a little bit of freedom to explore their character a little bit. And it can work on both ends. But you can only do that if you know the script and you have a solid show underneath. Because let's say you go into a situation where you know your script and you have everything ready, and then you kind of want to branch out a little bit and something's not working, you just go right back to your script. But if you don't have your script, you just lost the show because you have nothing to return to. We also want to make sure, as a brief note here, that you're avoiding performance fatigue when it comes to your script. Basically what that means, and we might talk about that again later, of course, because it just compounds on itself, is that if you are performing the same routine 10, 15, 20-minute sets, but you're doing walk around, and you're performing here, 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 for 45 minutes to an hour, and you're doing walk around, do not do this. Hello everybody, I'm so glad to be here at your table. Everything is so nice. We've got a nice little card trick for you today. Hey guys, I'm going to do a nice little coin trick for you here. And you know what? I've got about 20 minutes left here before I'm going to head out. Why don't we just go ahead and, here you go. Go ahead and sign this card for me. Great. Oh, the coin. Yeah, the coin is, oh, I'm supposed to make that disappear. Let me go ahead and make that disappear for you. Okay, there you go. And it's gone. Hacha. Thank you, everybody. You've been great. We'll never see you again. It's because they won't rehire me. So you want to be a 5 or above the entire time. Now I say 5 and above, depending on you. Now, if you happen to be more of a monotone and you can't change your energy level as much, you want to practice that because you're performing. You want to be a solid above 5. And I say that because sometimes you might have those drop-offs in your performance where you go back to a normal level. You don't want to go down to a 1. A 1 is negative in this case. You want to be at a 5. You want to be energetic. You want to be animated. You want to have a good time. And then you want to climb up to those beautiful moments when we can make some magic happen for you today and just have fun with it. Brief note on dancing. Do not dance unless you have dance lessons and your instructor has given you the green light. I have neither of those, so do not ever let me dance for you again. Choosing material and developing an act. We just briefly touched base on this. Performance trumps trick. It does not matter if your trick works. It doesn't. We have thousands of performers out there in the world. It might matter for magicians who want you to be technically skilled, but if you can perform, doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're telling jokes, if you're scuba diving, it doesn't matter if you're a trapeze artist. It doesn't matter if you're painting. Look at Bob Ross painting a picture. You could watch him all day long. Doesn't matter. If you have the ability to perform, doesn't matter what you're doing, it can still be successful. They don't know if your trick failed until you tell them that it failed. If it has failed, scrap it and move on. If it can be recovered, recover, move on. But always be Superman. Always maintain your confidence and composure to complete out whatever it is that you're doing, even if that means closing the door on it and moving to the next. Only perform your best. Performance trumps trick. Tricks can fail, but not because you let them. Tricks can fail because something went wrong, because something will go wrong eventually. But make sure you're only performing your best material. That goes back to number 1, your foundation, master your craft. Only perform tricks that you have mastered completely. I'm guilty of performing stuff that I learned because of excitement and I want to get videos out. We got to stop doing that. It's better to, actually, in terms of videos, it's better to produce low quality videos than it is to perform quality videos to some degree. However, if I want to have social proof, I want to make sure that I'm only uploading videos that are good, because if I start doing live performances for you, like over on TikTok, and I show you a video where I perform a trick flawlessly in a short video, and then I go live to do it, and I can't reproduce the same results, then the social proof is lost because I've just proven that I could only do it because I either edited the video or I did it 1,000 times until it was perfect. But then I can't actually perform it live. Bollocks. Only use real world props, nothing obvious. So what that means is basically this. As a good example, something that we will share with you here today. So I have Bubble Fun. 3+ bubbles, 4 fluid ounces, and there's bubbles on there. Or I have Amazing Magic Bubbles. Not for human consumption. I mean, I guess that's important to put on there. And then there's like these fake looking bubbles. And then it just says Amazing Magic Bubbles again. Now, I want to take this, listen closely, bottle of bubbles. It's empty currently. I want to take this, which is a bottle of bubbles. I bought this with bubbles and I blow bubbles from it. And I want to take this magic prop and I want to put it in there. Because this is a prop. This is fake. Magic bubbles? Why would I want to bring out a bottle of magic bubbles when I can produce magic bubbles from real bubbles? So I want to take my magic prop. You can tell it's fake. Clearly what he's talking. Only use real world props. This is a misrepresentation of what it is that I want to do. I don't want to broadcast to you that I have magic bubbles. I want to create magic with regular bubbles. The distinction should be obvious, right? But, like we talked about, I don't want to assume that you just know. But I also don't want to blatantly just tell you what I'm doing. Magic bubbles is clearly a prop. I don't want it to convey to you that it's fake. I want to pull out an actual bottle of bubbles, and then I want to produce magic bubbles from the real bubbles. So that's what I want to work on there. Nothing obvious. Magic bubbles with fake bubbles is clearly obvious. But a bottle of bubbles is not obvious because that's... And you can clearly tell. I mean, just look at these two things. You can clearly tell that they are mimics of one another. I mean, they're almost interchangeable, but they're only interchangeable to the point that one is clearly fake and one is real. So I want to use the real one, not the fake one. Use emotion. Yeah, man. I want to be emotive. I don't know if that voice really comes across as sad or if it's just more sarcastically sad. So I need to work on that. But this is real laughter. Because laughing is fun. Crying is, well, can be therapeutic. Use emotion. Music. I got music playing in the background right now. Stories. Tell you, I have a beautiful story about this one time when I was a wee lad in the old country. Yeah, I'll tell you my first magic story right here. I'll jump right into it. One of my first professional magic shows that I ever went to see was in Dollywood, Tennessee. And the guy was doing the floating cane. I have no idea who he is. Maybe he was famous. Maybe he was just local talent. I don't know. He was promoting the floating cane. They were selling them. And I kept running away from my group of people to go watch the magician. I was young. I was maybe 10-ish, somewhere around there. And I just kept running away from him, and I kept coming back to the magician. They kept coming to find me. There I was, mesmerized by this guy on stage with his microphone hanging down. Ken Weber would not be pleased because it was a headset mic. And the cord kept, because it was back in the day, there was a cord. It kept getting stuck. Like, he didn't mess up, but now that I look back on it with how I understand how the floating cane works, the cord, there was a moment where there was a blip of time where I was like, oh, see, he's doing the spin around the head thing, but he's got the cord. So he didn't mess up, but there was a little hiccup that I can see now that I didn't see then. So I was absolutely mesmerized by the floating cane, and it was one of the first times that I saw a magician perform live. Absolutely thrilling. And it was a lot of fun. Not so much when my group found me. They were not happy that I kept disappearing on them, but good times. Fear, right? Fear for the ride home. Lost romance. Yeah, lost romance. I'll tell you, this is definitely more of a funny story than an actual lost romance story. I grew up eating tuna fish. Tuna fish Sammys. They're so delicious. I love them so much. A little bit of cheese on there. But I only wanted Miracle Whip. 2 white pieces of bread, maybe toasted. But you could just give me tuna fish, Miracle Whip, bread. Perfect. A couple of years ago, I was out working on the road. And I went to a gas station, Subway, and I got a tuna fish sub. I ate it, and immediately, as soon as it hit my stomach, I knew something was wrong. Over the next couple of days, I developed a stomach bug that made me leery and worried that perhaps tuna fish was no longer for me. So I waited a couple of years, and then I didn't eat tuna fish. It was sad. Until one day I tried again, and I got sick again. So now my favorite food was lost to me. My once great love. I don't know what I'm doing. What is happening here? No. So now I have like a love-hate relationship. I love tuna fish. My body hates it. So I can only eat it every once in a while and in small amounts. So, lost romance. Happy, sad thoughts about pets. We all, got pets. It's a good time. Happy, sad stories can really bring that out. Audience participation. It's always good to get audiences involved. Later on, we're going to talk about, I'm not going to talk about it here, but later on, we're going to talk about the stages of participation and how those interactions should go. Then we're going to talk about starting naked, right? This doesn't mean clothes. It just means, in general, when you start you're choosing your material, we talk about this. I have a coin. This isn't your performance. This is just what you have in your hand. Then you're going to learn the trick. This is it. This is what you're going to do. You're going to pick up the coin. You're going to place it into your hand. And that coin's going to jump to this hand. Something simple, something not like that, just better. Basically, you're going to learn the trick from start to finish without saying anything, or just learning the pattern that came with it. 100%. Perform it and do it, not perform it live, but just do it until it is perfect. What is going on here? Why are you... Brief intermission. Anyway, sorry about that. Learn and perform the trick using only the fundamentals of the trick. Because you can't perform it your way until you learn it just in general. Master your craft. And then don't try not to have any preconceived notions. Now, obviously, you probably bought the trick because you had an idea in mind. That's fine. Keep that tucked away for a second and just save it, because you might find that it's not going to work. Maybe you do find that it naturally gets to that stage. But you're going to let the presentation grow organically from the bare bones version of the trick. So as you start to perform it, as you start to learn it, you're going to do it with nothing. And then as you perform it, you're going to find words, phrases, you're going to find movements that work well with it. And then you're going to find that performance is going to fit you, because you're doing it with your idioms, your mannerisms, and it's just going to naturally flow because nothing is forced, because it just happened naturally that way. Then don't forget, you have your script, and then you rehearse it until it's perfect. You go out to perform it to some people, and you might find there's some interaction there that changes it on its head, and you're like, oh, I love that. Let's incorporate that. It's perfect. Home practice is for your magic. Live performance is for practice, for showmanship. So you can practice the trick, the magic, as much as you want at home until it's flawless. You get your little mirrors out, perform it so that everything's good. You're not going to get better at performing until you perform. I go TikTok live and I'm like, because You have interactions, you have timing, you have angles that you have to worry about now. And so you're not going to get any better at those things until you understand your audience perspective. And you can practice some of that, but you're not going to practice being able to orate your voice properly across the stage. You're not going to, I mean, you take lessons for all these things, but you're not going to understand those fundamentally, the emotion that you're going to feel when you've got a room full of people until you do it. Okay, let's talk about your appearance, because your appearance matters. Matters. You want to dress for success. Take care of your hands and nails. Make sure your shoes are clean. Avoid glasses unless it's absolutely necessary, because they're reflective and some other things can happen there. So make sure that if you do have glasses, make sure that you have the frames that are anti-glare. Handkerchief, make sure it's clean. Make sure your jacket's nice. Make sure your shirt is nice. Your voice. Pauses are powerful. No commas and periods are necessary. Ignore punctuation. So basically what that means is that I can stop at any point in my sentence. It doesn't matter if there's a period or a comma or anything. What matters is that you are emphasizing the points that you want to emphasize. And that's where you create your powerful moments. Those pauses mean everything. Change the emphasis to a different syllable. So when you're practicing your script, get in the habit of reading the line for line, and every word, change it. At every word, change it. At every word, change it. At every word, change it. And so that way, as you're practicing, you're getting used to this. Because every time you perform it, this really helps with that performance fatigue that we talked about. If you perform the same script differently every time, then it's going to feel like a completely different show. And it's going to keep you connected into your performance. Make sure your speech and words can be understood by your audience. Listen to success speakers and learn how to be compelling. So make sure you're doing your research there. Language skills. We're gonna go through some of these a little bit faster because this is getting into the nitty gritty. And now I got a phone going off again. Language skills. Stay away from cliches. Keep errors to a minimum, grammatically speaking. Be honest about lying, and don't lie about being honest. What that means is that a magician is going to lie for the purpose of creating the magic. So that means don't blatantly lie like, this pen is blue. It doesn't do anything for your show, especially if you're already lying about what it is that you're doing in order for misdirection to happen. So just be honest. Only have the audience participate when the outcome is relevant. So don't ask questions that the answers are meaningless. Like, for instance, how many people drove here today? Nobody cares. Unless you're going to say, how many people think this or believe this? Okay, now why don't we go ahead and take this half of the room and we're going to do something specific with you guys. And then over here, we're going to do something specific with you guys because you said no or you said yes. And then you're going to bring it into the presentation. It's going to mean something because the question had relevance. You reacted. We just talked about that. Don't ask questions unless you're going to interact with the audience and then use that as part of the show. Don't just ask frivolous questions to get a hand raised. That's not participation. You might be like, oh yeah, I had interaction all over the place because you asked them a question that didn't go anywhere. Don't ask questions or make statements that are obvious. How to be funny. Talk through the punchline. This is a talk show reference where you're going to tell a joke and you're not going to wait for the laugh. You're just going to keep going, and if they laugh, they laugh. If they don't, it wasn't funny, but you're just going to, your show goes on. 2 hooks. Organic from the situation, which is better, and jokes or other gags. So these are things that you've added to your show because you like them, but they have nothing to do with actually the context of what's happening in the show. Callbacks are important. We talked about this in other videos. If you are having a conversation with your friends and stuff, just make sure that you're taking a moment and you're saying, hey, how do I want to phrase it? say you've been talking for 20 minutes to a half an hour, and then you tell a joke based on something that you talked about earlier in the conversation. What that is allowing you to do is you're storing away information so that you can use it later. This is how ad-libbing can really come in handy for you, because you're recalling something that was already funny, but it's contextually relevant to what you're saying now. So just practice that. Avoid listener fatigue by eliminating filler words. Use humor with compassion. Master your domain. Then there's some sound and lighting stuff. We're not gonna skip it, but we're just gonna say this. Make sure, as we go through all this, we're gonna talk about music a little bit more in depth. Make sure with your sound and lighting that your audio, like I do, like I can see my audio and I can see my videos good. I look down, I see we're at an hour and 21 minutes. You know, I'm checking these things to make sure my stream is good. I can monitor the vocals. I can see that you can hear me. I can even throw this in here and go. It's fun and exciting. Okay, so just make sure that you're monitoring these things and make sure that they're good. Because it says right here, use monitors so you can see and hear exactly what they see and hear. And you want to mentally check in with that from time to time. Music. Uses. Slow moments, build tension, enhance frivolity. Like if you messed up something and you wanted to, bring it to the forefront, like an Elmer Fudd moment. Signal a climatic moment. Reactions. We know, just to get through some of this, we know that music can be used to create emotion. So you want to make sure that your music is in line with the message that you're doing for your show and your routine. Music on its own can move people, so use that. Avoid miscues. We don't want circus music for spectators, because we just said that we're using music to enhance frivolity. We don't want to downplay spectators, we want to appreciate them, so don't use circus music. Stay away from the Jeopardy theme for intense moments, because it's overused. Music cliches. Don't use the same soundtrack that's been used for 473 years. Hierarchy of music. Set the mood, makes a statement. Rhythm sets the beat, heartbeat of the show. Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages left. We're an hour, almost an hour and a half into this, and we're going to call this workshop number 1. And go ahead and leave comments down below for any questions that you might have. We're going to come back in it next time, and we will recap the music portion. We will go back into sound and lighting a little bit, but I did want to end the show here because I do have to move on to the next thing. I have to go to work. These workshops are going to be a lot of fun, and they're going to take up copious amounts of time because there's so much information to get through. I mean, you figure this book's almost 300 pages. This is 12 pages of notes. It's not going to happen in a day. And these workshops are going to be forever until we have the perfect show, which will never happen. So you get to see my face forever. Cue the SpongeBob meme. One eternity later. So thank you, everybody. And remember, stay positive, stay active, and stay awesome. And hopefully you click the buttons. Yeah, you click the book sponsors giveaway. We want to be giving away copies of this book. Go ahead and donate to the channel today. Almost lost it. Sliding away. Don't forget to click this button over here. This is going to help subscribe to the channel so that you can see what we're posting. And over here is a video that's just for you, which is probably one of the previous videos, I'm guessing, because that's what would make sense. Okay, bye.